Hey, welcome back to the MMA Vivisection. I'm Zane Simon. I'm joined here by Victor Martinez and Eddie Mercado of Bloody Victor
Bloody
Martinez.
elbow.
What? Okay, I'm joined here by
Some people.
I'm joined here by the day laborers that I brought on to do.
This show's getting canceled.
I'm
I know
joined here.
I'm
Yeah.
paying you guys straight cash for this one. I got
Under the table, just
yeah, this is like the illegal construction site of MMA.
Holy shit. This is how we're starting off. Shots fired.
Okay. Victor Rodriguez, Eddie
Yes.
Mercado.
Yes. The resident failed Desi Arnaz impersonators that are joining Zane Simon.
Oh man, I think maybe we should just like stop and restart the whole thing.
No. No. These are the moments we strive for. X that shit. We will continue with this. I like this.
Okay. We have
what are you drinking,
uncovered.
Vic? What is it? What is in the mason jar? Is that some shine? What are you doing?
No, I'd be having a much better morning if it were. No, that's just straight water. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we've uncovered my inherent racial bias, but
I don't think I've ever seen Zane turn red like this before.
oh, proud day, proud day.
Yes.
Okay, so we're here to talk Bellator 140. No controversy, nothing to see here, people. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Just me going all in on my total whiteness.
So yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about
so
some face punching.
yeah, face punching. This is a pretty good Bellator card for, it's a fun action-heavy card up at the top, and I got it's got a bunch of fights. Like I don't know, they're not not a lot of meaningful fights or really any meaningful fights outside of a title fight at the top, but a bunch of fights that kind of promise a bunch of knockouts. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited, especially coming off. We've had phenomenal cards lately. Like it's been such a great fight week. You know, they had the International Fight Week. You had the Invicta on Friday. You had UFC on Saturday. UFC on Sunday. You had UFC on Wednesday, and now you got a Bellator on Friday. And not that anyone gambles, but I hope you all parlayed all those cards together, including the Keith Thurman fight. Because if you didn't, you dropped the ball. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm every single card on the main card. I think is interesting to say the least. A lot of showcases. We had some people pulling out, but I think especially the main event, it's almost a toss up for me, honestly. I'm high on both of those guys. I don't know. I think we might see some fireworks on this card, and it's at the Mohegan Sun, which is always a fun time. So.
Martinez, what are you excited for?
Oh, you sly bastard, you. All right. First off, Eddie, you did mention this being one of the Connecticut casino cards, which generally is stacked with a lot of talent that goes all the way up to New Hampshire, the main scene. A lot of these guys that have fought for CES, UMMA, a lot of these regional cards with, and I believe, Zane, you've mentioned this as well before when we've done some of these, that some of these guys have deceptive records. They will have maybe, a 10-7 pro record, but it's because they've been fighting really, really tough guys. And another thing is, a lot of these dudes have a lot of opponents in common because it's somewhat of an incestuous scene, but don't let that fool you. It's very loaded with a lot of heavy talent and guys that really could do a hell of a lot of work. So this does not look, at least the undercard doesn't look as the most exciting of things, but as you start to move up the card, you realize there is some very, very solid potential for exciting bouts and things that could lead to something more down the road.
Yeah, that East Coast fight scene. I mean, I think of it like as it's the fight scene that produces dudes like George Sullivan,
Yeah.
where it's loaded with a bunch of really tough, hard-hitting guys. They're not always the most technical fighters in the world, but there are a lot of really complete, tough fighters that end up battling each other over and over again in that circuit. And yeah, like you just end up with a lot of really tough, hard-nosed, kind of gritty fighters that put on great fights that are, they're good like card filler talent because they're almost all guaranteed. You're not going to get a lot of just like ugly, sloppy, grindy fights out of them.
So
Um,
you're saying that the NorCal scene. Never mind.
I'm saying that there's a reason that Explode is out in California.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that is wow. Yeah, I feel bad now laughing at that. That's shit. Oh well.
But on that note, we got to take, I know Vic, you had some interesting things that you want to talk, or a few things you want to talk about in this undercard. Because to me, I look at it and it is all just there's nobody I recognize except Waylon Lowe from who I remember from his UFC days. So, you said you had some stuff to talk about on it. So give us a brief overview of the undercard and what you're watching out for.
Yeah, just a few things to touch on. We're gonna have the opening bout between Kinmoy, who fought Steve Lopez back in, I'm sorry, Steve Garcia in Bellator a while ago in what was one of the craziest fights of in quite some time. He's a veteran of the New England scene. He's 6-2 as a pro, 4-1 as an amateur. Very good submission defense, and he hits really, really hard. He's been sharpening his boxing and his angles. He's going to be fighting a very, very tough Blair Tugman, who's also a CES veteran. He was on a two-win streak. Very strong wrestler, and even though he does have lapses in his defensive striking, he does go out there and engages his opponents. He's really actually rather fearless. Aside from that, we've got Waylon Lowe. He's going to be fighting the very durable Ryan Quinn. Waylon Lowe is 15-6. He's got 3 knockouts, 4 TKOs, and couple of submissions under his belt. Very solid wrestler, hard hitter. He seems to be sort of finding a different stride now outside of the UFC. He's implementing his wrestling game with his boxing a lot better. His submission defense is getting a lot better as well. Ryan Quinn is 10-5, 2-0 as an amateur. He's got wins over some other regional veterans as well. Very basic boxing game, but he takes a lot of risks. He takes some really solid chances that sometimes end up paying off for him. He prefers a very heavy clinch game. That's probably not going to work against Waylon Lowe. He probably won't be able to out-wrestle him, which means that he's going to have to get creative, and this may very well bring out some excitement on that end. We have the female fight between Colleen Medeiros and Sarah Pyatt, which might be exciting based on what we've seen. So I'd probably dog-ear that one. That might be worth checking out. And as far as everything else on the undercard, it's just watching development and growth of some of these other fighters. So worth at least checking out if you have the time. If you choose to skip it, you'll be forgiven for doing so. But there could be some positives here.
But Bellator undercards tend to have a lot of finishes. That's like usually they tend to book well for finishing fights. So if nothing else, it's one of those things where you can always, especially since they're streaming a lot of their stuff live, and it ends up being like the feed stays up for a few hours usually. You can always look at the results and then go back and watch fights that end up with something wild. That's not a bad approach. All right, so we've gone through the undercard. Let's dive into the main card because that's that's really where all the exciting fights are. Like I say, these all fights all look like they're booked to be knockouts. Like that looks like what they have booked every fight on this card for, is to end inside the distance and end with some heavy fisticuffs. So first fight up, former title contender, I believe. Was he? Yeah,
he fought Shlemenko,
yes.
right?
Yes,
he fought Shlemenko, former title contender, and really kind of early in his career title contender. Brennan Ward is taking on late notice replacement Roger Carroll. He was supposed to fight Gavin Sterrett. Sterrett was pulled from the card and cut from Bellator basically because he could not get past the Rampage issue. That was kind of
right.
he kept demanding that they absolutely guarantee that Rampage could be in his corner. They kept guaranteeing it. Then he started making some other contract demands, and they cut him. So, not a good look for Gavin Starrett, honestly, in the middle of all this.
Right. He honestly better hope Rampage gets him in the UFC or something, because I mean, he's not a big enough name to be making demands, and he's going off the strength that Rampage will save the day maybe. But I saw a report that Bellator actually granted that Rampage could actually corner him. But
they were fine with it, and I think he then came back with some other demand or something like that, and they were just like, nope, done.
Yeah. And so what? Let him go. That's the politics side of this. We just want to watch fights. I hate when fighters pull out of fights when they don't have to. That's just, I don't like it because it changes everything. Like it just screws everything up, and there's just not a lot of honor in it, and I feel like in the fighting sport, you have to kind of, honor is kind of part of it, it's Bushido, you have to, if you say you're going to do something, and that was Conor McGregor's biggest issue with Jose Aldo, as he says, not going through with the fight, it's, by hook or by crook, you should make it to your fight, unless the doctor says you can't fight, then don't fight, but outside of that,
which the doctors may or may not have done for Jose Aldo. So,
Correct. There's, both sides of that.
Depending on which doctor you're listening to on what day.
From where.
And from where, yes.
From where. But a couple of points, though, based on what you just said. I don't think that really Rampage would be the person who'd be able to get Starrett into the UFC. It's actually more on his management, which I'd probably, if I had to guess, would be Anthony McGann or probably someone who's in Rampage's camp. But I mean, despite that, you're talking about a guy who's 35. He's known more for his kickboxing. I'm not sure that there's going to be as much upside or that maybe he'd be able to make. I mean, well, I probably shouldn't say that because I don't know how much he's making in Bellator, but how much would the UFC actually offer the guy? So I guess he's now going to have to test himself on the open market and see what happens. It's kind of an odd hill to choose to die on. You're being given the go-to and the green light by the organization to bring in your head trainer, your head coach, and your friend. I'm not sure what compelled him to do this, but it is unfortunate. But as a result, we do kind of get a matchup that I wouldn't say necessarily is more fair, but at least on paper, stylistically, it seems like it might have more potential to deliver. Because you're not just having a guy who's a wrestle boxer fighting a primary kickboxer, you're having another wrestler who's very submission savvy fighting a wrestle boxer, and I don't know, that probably would make for better viewing, maybe, because we know that these fights can get ugly regardless.
But you're not picking you're not picking Roger Carroll, right?
No, I'm not, but I don't expect him to be a pushover by any means. I don't think he's going to be. I mean, he might get dominated purely on the basis of wrestling, but Ward is going to have his hands full with his submission attempts, especially a guy like Carroll who is absolutely lethal on his back. And some of his bouts, the way he sets up his submissions, it might take a little time, but he can make that happen. He capitalizes on a lot of mistakes that guys make from top control. So Ward better mind his P's and Q's. I don't think Carroll would be. I wouldn't favor him to win. I wouldn't pick him to win. But if he did win, it would be. It wouldn't be all that surprising, but it would be a hell of an upset.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to agree with that, and I think that Carroll's submission game is definitely. It's not so much that his submission game is all that as much as it is Brennan Ward's ability to be submitted. He's one of those guys that kind of like he'll go for a rear naked choke without having both hooks in. Like he'll have one hook in trying for like a neck crank with his back against the fence. He doesn't make the smartest decisions all the time. But I don't see the fight going that way. I don't see this being a grappling match. I think Roger Carroll. He's lost to Diego Lima by TKO, which is not, I mean, that's kind of shameful, honestly. He lost to Uriah Hall, no shame there. But he submitted Clint Hester with the armbar in the first round, which was pretty cool. But my issue with him is his stand-up. I feel like he shells up when he gets hit, and he'll turn his back when he's getting blitzed. and he just kind of looks away, and that is a huge no-no. Like, you don't do that. You don't take your eyes off your opponent, especially when they're blasting you. And, you know, he is tough, and he'll go for leg locks and all this, but his strikes are so slow. Like, I almost feel like he doesn't have any fast-twitch muscle fibers. And I feel like with the way he defends strikes, Brennan Ward is going to blitz him. He's going to come out and just blitz this guy. And this is Brennan Ward's fight to lose. You know, if he comes out and he's smart, which he's not usually, and just keeps it standing, blitzes him with just a whole bunch of punches right off the bat, I think he can get a really quick finish. Not only that, but this is a home game for Brennan Ward. I was actually there for his last fight at the Mohegan Sun, and the crowd reception for him was just amazing. I think he probably got the best reception out of anybody on that card. And, you know, he's struggled in the past. Shlemenko actually was outstriking him, and he ended up submitting him. Tamden McCrory, he straight went Mortal Kombat 2 brutality on him, finish him in just like a 7-piece, and that was wicked. But, you know, I got to say that Carroll loses to a certain level of competition, and I think that Brennan Ward is that level of competition. So I'm going to go Brennan Ward. His path to victory seems a little more plausible with, you know, blitzing strikes, because he is a power puncher, and he's got brutal, dirty boxing, and he's got venom. He's got venom in his strikes, and he's not gun shy at all. Like, he will throw hands. He will, you know, he will get in your face, and as long as he cannot, you know, it's kind of like Ally Quinta in some regards, as to where he can be doing well and then just for some reason do something that just gets him, that costs him the victory. But I think he should have this one in the bag. So Brennan Ward, finish first round. That's my prediction. KO probably.
I think he's a little closer to Maximo Blanco than Ally Quinta, maybe.
That's for sure. Okay, but I can see that. Well, Al actually has been doing really well lately.
Yeah, Al's gotten better consistently.
Once he started fighting better competition, Ally Quinta has just been looking great.
Yes. And the odds are heavily in Ward's favor. He is a favorite from -485 to -525. Carroll, the underdog, +350 to +415. So
yeah,
certainly Ward is a landslide favorite there.
If I were Roger Carroll, I would go for the flying leg lock, a la Rio Chonin, Anderson Silva. That's his best path to victory, in my opinion.
All right, so next up, we've got another action fight, another action showcase, another fight that looks like it's set up to be a big knockout early, maybe. Paul Daley taking on Dennis Olson. This is another, this is not a late notice. I was going to say this is another late notice, but it's not. They just booked Paul Daley to fight Dennis Olson. I know Daley said that he kind of wanted to slow things down a little after his last fight against Andre Santos, which he won, but it was not pretty, and he came close to losing a couple times in that fight too. Like, it was kind of an ugly back and forth brawl, and so he's getting what I think on paper looks like a bit of a softball here. So, Vic, what's your take on it?
Well, here's the thing. With the striking department, obviously Daley's going to have the upper hand here. You're facing an opponent in Dennis Olson, 14-8, 9 submissions, and 1 TKO finish. Only 1 finish by strikes out of that. And he's got losses to guys like Dan Kramer, John Doomsday Howard, Rick Hahn, and David Branch, which speaks well of him. He's got wins over guys like John Manley, the inimitable Mike Dolce, yes, and regional veteran Todd Chattel. He eats way too many shots, though, especially when it comes down the middle. He's a big fan of winging hooks, and he will get into a sloppy dogfight if it's just a battle of throwing shots from the side. But when it comes to actually countering jabs and dealing with crosses, it seems that sort of backs him up a bit or sort of slows him down. He does have that quality that he doesn't give up, and he does pull submissions out of the hat. He has been rocked and still pulled off submissions before. I don't know how well that will really serve him against a guy who is as dynamic and as another guy who's just another sudden finisher. I mean, he will pull that left hand out of nowhere with very little setup and just put a guy to sleep. So Not that many paths to victory outside of grappling. The question is whether or not Paul Daley's grappling defensively has evolved to the point where he'll be able to survive, and not only survive, but be able to come out on top, to use this to his advantage, keep the fight where he wants it, and put him away. I don't give Dennis Olson much of an opportunity to win this, but again, it all really comes down to where Daley's at this point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Vic said. He pretty much nailed it there. Dennis Olson, 14-8, 9 wins via sub, which is, that's pretty impressive. Like Vic was saying, he's lost to some top competition, so he has that experience. He's wrestle heavy. He likes to go for the takedown, and he can actually secure the takedown. Like he will get it done. He will get the takedown. He will put you on your back. But I'm just not so sure that he exactly knows what to do when he gets you on your back. He always ends up getting like reversed, or he ends up in a submission attempt, or he's putting his hands on the mat. I'm not so sure. I remember he was fighting Brett O'Terry, and he was going for a suplex, and O'Terry had locked up a Kimura, but he still went for the suplex. And when the suplex landed, he was like full on Kimura and tapped out. And it's like, you got to know when and when not to do certain things. And I just don't think he has the polish to even hang with Daley, even in the wrestling. If this was strictly a grappling match, I'm not so sure he has what it takes to out-grapple Paul Daley. And, I mean, Paul Daley, what can you say about Paul Daley? He's been fighting since 2003. He is a phenomenal striker, beautiful combos, good punches to the body, which I really like. I love when fighters go to the body. His kryptonite is obviously the wrestling. He's been getting better at it, but in his last fight against Andre Santos, he spent the end of every single round on his back. And that might be a cardio issue. Maybe he doesn't have the gas tank to survive all 3 rounds the way he starts the rounds. So that might be something to exploit if you're Dennis Olson. Like Alexander Yokolov, I think he had a very smart game plan for Paul Daley. And pretty much what he did, he stayed away from Daley and then smothered him. And that might be the blueprint for Daley. Just kind of stay out of, stay away from the guns.
Yakovlev is like a master of sport in wrestling and judo and sambo, and like really super technical grappler. So for
sure. And that's not Dennis Olson.
No.
For sure. I'm just trying to create a way for Dennis Olson to win this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to that effect, the odds are heavily skewed in Paul Daley's favor.
Right.
He's a favorite -700 to -759. Dennis Olson is the underdog, +435 to +564. So, yeah, the odds makers and gamblers are having as many problems finding ways for Dennis Olson to win as you guys are. On that note, the having horrible problems finding ways to win, we have Michael Page facing Rudy Bears up next.
Oh man, I'm actually excited for this just because, like I said, I was at the Mohegan Sun for the British Invasion where Michael Page was supposed to fight, but he ended up pulling out, so I didn't get to see him fight. But he does everything you're not supposed to do, but gets away with it. He does the stuff that Anderson Silva got criticized for when he lost to Chris Weidman the first time. He showboats. He's like a Roy Jones Jr. kind of. He knows how good he is, and he knows how good his opponents aren't. And I mean, he just shows off. And man, I really love his footwork. I feel like his footwork is super exceptional, and he's real fluid in his mobility. His reflexes are outstanding, maybe the best in MMA. I mean, who has better reflexes than this guy? A couple things I don't like is I feel like he's not proficient in pocket punching. I feel like all his strikes are rangy. They come from the outside. They explode out of nowhere. And he's not one to stand in the pocket and throw a 3-piece. That's not going to happen. And that might end up he might need to work on that because he is so tall, and he's eventually going to fight some people who will close the distance and are decent pocket punchers, like Rudy Bears, who can actually stand in front of you and throw a couple punches that are tight and will hit you. And that might be an avenue where Rudy might actually catch him, perhaps, maybe. Rudy Bears, he's tough. He's a good counterpuncher, especially when guys rush in on him. Now, is he going to catch Michael Page coming in on him? Probably not, since Page is so long. But, he needs. If Rudy can get the fight to the ground, then that might be his best bet if he's not going to pocket punch. But it's a long, long night for Rudy Bears.
Yeah. So what you're predicting Michael Page knockout?
I think Michael Page is going to use his speed and timing instead of his fundamentals, and he's going to try to stay off the fence and just stay at range. And will he get the finish? Can he finish Rudy Bears? Maybe. Maybe.
He's been knocked out 4 times before.
Yeah. Definitely Michael Page. Like, there's no way Page is going to lose this fight for sure. But if Rudy Bears can just get inside and throw and just start teeing off in the pocket, he has a chance. But outside of that, Michael Page all day.
Victor, give me that hard prediction. I want that line, the round, the time, the punch, the method. No.
Okay. This is the part where you start asking for too much. All right, Michael Page is exceptional. He's got a highlight reel already with only 7 fights as a professional. Problem is that I'm starting to wonder at what point that's going to stop working. At what point our opponent's just going to be hip to what he's going to throw out next. We already know he's very flashy. He does a lot of these things, but when guys are going to probably start figuring that out. Will Rudy Bears be that guy? Maybe not in the striking department. Let's remember that Rudy Bears is 5'11", and he's also much more of a wrestler. He doesn't have that many finishes by strikes. He's only got 5 finishes by strikes, including 2 straight knockouts. But I don't know exactly how that'll work. Now, Michael Page just got off of one. He's beat Nishan Burrell and Ricky Rainey. Burrell being much more of the wrestling-oriented opponents that he's ever faced. Rudy Bears I'd probably say his wrestling is craftier in that sense. I really don't know how Page is going to deal with this. Will he be able to survive and actually get past Bears? Because if you remember the Burrell fight, it was pretty ugly. Burrell made it in his face. He clinched with him. He pressed him against the cage, and Page did manage with the adversity, and he did win that bout, as well he should have. But I don't know if that stuff is going to work against Bears, and I don't know if Bears are going to capitalize on it for a finish. I don't think he's going to be able to finish him in any capacity like that. I think it's going to be ugly. Outside of any carelessness on Bears' behalf where he gets knocked out or just picked apart from the outside, I don't think that Page is going to be given that much room to work. So I would confidently still pick Michael Page. I just don't think it's going to be the killer instinct demonstration that people think that this is going to be. I really don't see that.
If I can interject real fast, just a little fun fact. Rudy Bears has been finished 11 out of 13 times. So he's lost 13, and he's been finished 11 of those times. Not only that, but he's won 4 of his last 11.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
I think the big concern I would make here, and this is one of those things that I think should be thrown out there, is that Nishan Burrell is probably a much better athlete than Rudy Bears.
Yeah,
and
I can see that. Yeah.
Is much more capable of keeping up with Page and not getting caught flush because he can keep up and move and a little more dynamic. My big concern would be that Bears may be a tougher style, a bit craftier fighter, a bit more well-rounded, able maybe a bit more pressuring, but less just less athletically competitive from a raw speed power standpoint.
It's almost like it's a step down, honestly.
Yeah,
Why?
it
I
is.
mean, why
I would
Rudy
say that
Bears?
Nishan Burrell is a step up from Rudy Bears, and this fight's just it's booked because I would say probably mostly because Page has got a corner and a team that is wants to protect, knows that he's worth protecting until they can get him really big fights, and that's a boxing mentality, but it's not necessarily a stupid mentality.
No, no.
And like Vic was saying, I mean, when are the antics going to catch up to Michael Page? Is it going to be when he finally faces some legit competition? I mean, Burrell. I mean, he was in the UFC, but I mean he's he's not exactly the most talented fighter. So
Well, I'm sorry, but Burrell is good, but he won in the UFC, but he missed weight horribly. Then he missed weight again and he lost. So it wasn't that he got, it wasn't like he was like he washed out of the UFC like some of these guys that go on crazy losing skids. But I mean, your point does stand that he's not maybe, he's not exactly a world beater, or at least not yet. And but yeah, it is sort of strange that Rudy Bears wouldn't. It does look like a downgrade, certainly.
yeah.
And the odds are longer for this fight than anything else on the card.
Really?
Michael Page is the favorite, minus 800 to minus 1215.
Jesus.
And Rudy Bears is the underdog, plus 500 or plus 475 to plus 839. So
I'm actually not upset with that. I think that's legit, especially in the step down in competition. I'm not mad at it.
I think the athletic mismatch is pretty huge. That's the big thing. Is that you're talking about somebody who has not shown himself to be a really competitive athlete at this kind of level, and you're throwing him against somebody who has shown himself to be a better athlete than the run. So that's kind of like I think that's where those odds come into play. Next up, we've got what looks like a really legit step up in competition and an interesting fight, an interesting potentially star building fight from Bellator, co-main event. Chris Honeycutt is taking on Paul Bradley, and Honeycutt has looked nothing but awesome in his time in Bellator, and I think they've got him pegged as somebody that they want to be a future star in their organization. Vic, what do you think?
Yeah, this is going to be. This actually looks like fun. You got two very, very solid wrestle boxers, but usually what happens when you have two high-end grapplers is you get. Now, this may not necessarily be that. Both Honeycutt and Bradley are very confident in their stand-up games. Honeycutt is 6-0 all of his career as a professional. He's got 1 submission and 4 TKOs. He's training out of Dethrone Base Camp. He's got very good striking defense. He's very, very explosive at everything in terms of his striking, his angles, his shots. He's good at selecting how far he's going to be, how close he's going to be when he's going for his takedowns. His boxing is basic. It seems more fundamentally sound. Like he's not going for anything too flashy, but it seems like everything is in the right place and at the right time. And his timing is decent too when it comes to picking his shots and knowing when to hit his opponent, catching him off balance especially. I mean, then you put him in with a guy like Paul Bradley, who's 22-6, 7 submissions, 7 TKOs, and he's only got 1 submission win as an amateur. Very, very heavy style of wrestling, much of a grinder. He's got tremendous top control, and he's got, his cardio does seem to get questionable later on in the fight, depending on the fight that he's in. He's got losses to Luke Rockhold, Mike Pierce twice, curiously enough. 1 in and 1 out of the UFC, Sapo Natal, and in Bellator, Valdir Araujo and Nate Coy. But he does also have wins over regional veteran Ryan Braun twice, Carl Amasu, and recently Josh Neer. That said, I really don't know if he's going to be able to handle Chris Honeycutt. I'm sure that at some point the fight will slow down. It may just turn into a battle of wills, but I really do think that not just based on athleticism, I think the youth, I think the explosiveness, all of that is going to favor Honeycutt later on in the fight. I'd probably say late second or somewhere around the 3rd round. Honeycutt will be able to take over and possibly finish this, most likely by strikes.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. Like Vic said, it's going to be a really fun fight. Paul Bradley, he's an Alliance MMA guy, 22-6. Well-rounded. I mean, he's got 7 KOs, 7 submissions, 8 decisions. So, he can win anywhere it goes. And he's got really strong takedowns, being a 2-time All-American, I believe. And he definitely demonstrated that in his last fight against Josh Neer. I believe he had 3 takedowns in that fight. Is that right? That whole fight, he took him down once in the first, kept him there, once in the second, kept him there, once in the third, and kept him there.
Oh, God.
He went full-on blanket with Josh Neer. And I kind of think that's a similar path to victory against Honeycutt if he can. Bradley does have some hands, but he gets hit a lot. Like, he's very hittable. And he's not exactly the fastest on the feet. Now, when he explodes on his takedowns, he's super athletic, but his footwork on his feet, I'm not sure, is going to be fast enough to deal with Chris Honeycutt. Honeycutt, also 2-time All-American. He's steadily getting better, and I think this is a big step up for him. And in his last fight, I feel like he's been showing really improved ground transitions and really improved ground control. Like, he's using his hips better to just put weight down on his opponents while he's striking them. And, man, Clayton McFarland, is that who he fought last?
Yes.
Oh, man. That dude got waxed. He took his back and he's just teeing off on his kidneys the whole time. And I'm like, I thought the ref was going to stop it sooner. But, man, he's a beast. Honeycutt is just such a beast. Now, like Vic was saying, when you have 2 wrestlers going at it, a lot of times we see a striking match. And like Vic was saying, that probably won't be exactly a bad one. Not exactly the most technical, but somewhat even, if that makes any sense. I don't think Bradley will be comfortable sitting there and just being like, okay, we're just going to trade punches. Bradley's going to be like, I'm going to come and take you down or clinch with you and grapple with you because I think I'm stronger, and I think that's going to be his path to victory. Closing the distance, trying to get the takedown, and negate, if he can, Honeycutt's speed. I think speed is the biggest difference in this fight, and that's why I'm picking Honeycutt, because I feel like he has the faster footwork, and he will have the ability to come in with a couple shots, maybe like a 1-2, get back out of range. And with the movement and the footwork, he will be able to negate the possible takedown of Bradley by not being right in front of him and let him set up for that takedown. It's not like Honeycutt has these amazing repertoire of strikes that he's going to blast Bradley with, but I definitely think that he has the speed to be in and out when necessary, stay out of danger, and I got Chris Honeycutt winning by decision just based off of footwork and outstriking, not like completely outstriking to where he's hurting him necessarily, but outpointing him on the feet for sure and pushing the pace.
Well, I think I can probably guarantee that Honeycutt is confident he can out-wrestle Paul Bradley, whether he can or not. I would bet that he is sure of that. Somebody with his kind of wrestling pedigree coming out of college,
right?
He's going to feel like he can dominate anyone.
You know what? And to what you're saying, Zane, this might be a fight IQ, or a fight Q, as I say. This might be a moment where we get to see if Honeycutt has a game plan and can he strategize, or is he just going out there doing what comes natural? Because
you're not allowed to say that ever again, by the way.
Well, fight Q?
Yeah.
Don't be jealous, Zane. You're mad you didn't think of it.
that is automatically off the table for all.
I actually thought that was kind of cute. That was pretty adorable, man. That was pretty. Come on, let him keep a little happiness.
The ladies like it.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. Well, I think Honeycutt actually probably can out wrestle Bradley too, even if it's not a great display of IQ as you put it.
Just one last thing regarding this. This does kind of remind me of what you guys just mentioned. Something that happened in the build-up to Daniel Cormier fighting Josh Barnett back in Strikeforce, where Cormier was very determined. He's like, that guy is not going to out-wrestle me, and it was just ingrained in him that he was going to. Some of these wrestlers have that pride. I wonder if these guys have, if either of them, or probably both, have that sort of mindset where it's like, no, that guy by no means is he going to dominate me in the thing that I specialize in. I'm curious to see if that would work out. And one last thing, Honeycutt's last opponent, Clayton McFarland. Zane, would you be able to would you be able to guess what organization he came up in and fought?
Explode!
Yeah, I will say this. Though, I want to say this full credit to Clayton Honeycutt or to Clayton McFarland.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Honeycutt's pre-Bellator record was 0% better. Like 0.
Yeah.
Like the guys he was fighting at UPC, Up and Comers Unlimited.
Yeah.
They were total cans, you know.
Well, I mean, it's hard to get fights for a guy like that. When you have a highly touted NCAA record, or you're a Marcelo Garcia, it's really hard for you to get opponents when you're starting out. So that's kind of expected.
Yeah, I was actually interested in that fight against McFarland because I thought it would be a good, like, you have two guys who basically brought up fighting cans, and it was going to be interesting to see how they do against one another, but Honeycutt totally dominated, so I am now.
That was a shellacking for sure.
I am now pretty thoroughly sold on the idea that Honeycutt could be on that elite prospect track, the kind of guy who, within the first 3 or 4 years of his career could be, fighting at a title contention level in any organization.
This is also the first time I believe he's actually facing a camp, like a well-known established camp, and I mean, I think this fight is a lot closer than people would think. I mean,
Bradley is at his peak still. Like, Bradley's in the prime of his career still. And he hasn't fought, like, it's not like Bradley's a guy who's just like, a vet way past his prime. This is somebody who, just beat Josh Neer and Carl Amasu and took Nathan Coy and Valdir Araujo to close decisions, and has otherwise, losses to Mike Pierce, Rafael Natal, Luke Rockhold. Like, he's not below that level anymore. This is somebody who's only losing to good veteran fighters. So I think Bradley's an excellent test.
Yeah. Bradley can pull it off, too. I mean, there's no reason why he can't pull from his experience and find out if Honeycutt has some holes in his game that he can exploit, or maybe strategize against them.
Yeah.
So on that note, the odds, Honeycutt is favored minus 269 to minus 300, and Bradley is the underdog plus 210 to 242, which I could see it being a little closer than that, but that's not bad. That's not like way skewed.
It's a little long, but I'm not mad at it.
It's not like plus 400.
Right. I'm just glad Honeycutt's not like minus 600 or minus 400 or something that an untested prospect should never be.
Yeah. So now that brings us to the main event. This is the one, like, Honeycutt Bradley and then Lima Koreshkov. Those are like the two really evenly booked fights on this card that, hopefully they're really good fights to, make up for the potential that the other fights on this card, even as exciting as they might be, could look really sloppy or just one-sided. Lima Koreshkov, it's a great, legit title fight for Bellator. Great welterweight scrap. I don't know. Like, Lima's legit, but Koreshkov, he's only got one loss to his career, and that is
Ben Askren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Douglas Lima. It's not like Douglas Lima is going to do what Ben Askren does. Like, he can't mirror that performance.
Lima's last loss was actually to Ben Askren as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, Eddie, give me what your thoughts on this fight are. Who you got winning?
I could not be more happy that this is happening. I really can't. I like both guys so much. Man, Koreshkov. This dude's a stud. I mean, he is such a fluid, rangy kickboxer. Rangy in terms of long strikes, not in terms of footwork, in and out. He kind of has this stalking style where he just slowly kind of comes at you and kind of stalks you down and hits you with just everything. I mean, he's like what he did to Burrell, that right kick to the face. It was actually like the knee hit him. I was like, man, this guy, he's got it going on for sure. He's 17-1, like you were saying. Ben Askren beat him, TKO'd him actually in the fourth. 10 KOs, 3 subs, 4 decisions. All right. His accuracy is outstanding. I feel like he's got a killer instinct. When he hurts you, he goes in for the kill, and he throws some brutal ground and pound when he knows you're hurt. Man, this is a tough one here. He's got really solid boxing. He goes to the body with strikes, punches, changes levels. Punch to the head, punch the body, which I really like. It's hard to find things I don't like about him. Something I don't like, though, I'd have to say he kind of stands a little too tall for my liking. His chin's a little up there, not necessarily up, but just kind of standing tall, which has worked for him because he's normally taller than the people he fights. But, man, so yeah, Burrell, he destroyed. Baseman, he destroyed. Man. I think if Koreshkov can use his range, use his long strikes, and play the in and out game, I think he has a really good chance of winning. If he can stay away from the heavy power of Lima and pick him apart from the outside, I think he has a legitimate chance at maybe not getting the finish, but definitely taking the fight to the later rounds and possibly outpointing him and gassing him perhaps, and winning a decision. All right, so on the flip side of that, Douglas Lima, 27 years old, 26-5, 12 KOs, 11 subs, 3 decisions. Huge for the division. I mean, this guy is a monster. He's gargantuan. He's just shredded. It's almost like never mind. I'm not even going to say that. He's so much better than his brother, though. It's just ridiculous. It's almost like they farmed his brother just for parts or something. It's like the difference in levels is just outstanding to me.
That's harsh.
It's true, though.
Hey, this is an objective opinion here.
No, me.
Man, what can you say about Lima though, man? He's got the heaviest hands. He's got like Jose Aldo kicks, leg kicks for real. What he did to Rick Hahn, like he absolutely brutalized his legs. Absolutely brutalized his legs, and that's his. I mean, I think that's his path to victory here is to attack Koreshkov's legs early and often, and reduce his mobility, and then come over the top with some heavy hands. He's got venom in every strike he throws, and he is more than capable of walking you down and putting the stamp on you. Like, look what he did to Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders actually did really well. Not really well, but he had some success standing in kicking range. He was staying far enough to not get punched, but where he messed up is instead of being in kicking range, getting out and coming back into kicking range, he just stayed at kicking range. And the problem with that is if Lima's in your kicking range, you're in Lima's kicking range. And that is not where you ever want to be. That is like the worst place to be. So, man. As far as weaknesses in Douglas Lima, they're few and far between. It could be he might have cardio issues, but we don't really ever know because he smoke checks everybody. Since his loss to Askren, he's finished 5 straight fights. And these are not cans that he's beating. He is smoke checking people. It's hard to find faults in him. I feel like sometimes he might stand a little too flat-footed because he's loading up on his shots, and he's not exactly the most mobile guy on his feet, but he does have really good movement in terms of getting out of the way of strikes, which I like, and it puts him in good positions to counter. But this is a tough one to call, man. This is really tough here. He had 1 fight in 2014. Koreshkov had 3 fights in 2014. So there's, Koreshkov has the consistency going on for him in terms of, being in there, getting the mat time. Man, I think Lima will probably attack the legs, control the range, not let Koreshkov just tee off on him from the outside. But I think it all comes down to the footwork of Koreshkov. Can he be in and out, or will he try to just stand there and trade thinking that he has more power, which he does not. Lima is definitely the more venomous striker of the two. The more technical striker, I don't know. I think their skill sets are very similar, but Lima's just the more venomous.
So what's your pick?
Because of that, Lima. I got Lima. How?
All right.
I have no clue. No clue how it's going to be, but Lima.
Vic?
I respect
Counterpoint.
that. I respect that. I can see that. All right, let's start off with Lima. He's out of ATT Atlanta, their little satellite gym there. 26-5, 5 knockouts, 7 TKOs, and 11 submissions. Notable, I'm going to get back to that in a moment. He's got losses to the immortal Matt Brown, Brent Weidman, and Ben Askren, as we mentioned. Currently on a 5-fight streak. Knocked out Ben Saunders twice, brutalized Rick Hahn. You know, he's got just a tremendous finishing instinct for his fights, and he is a heavier hitter. Very good submission defense, and he's very large for his weight class. He uses his reach and his size very well. That kind of worries me for Koreshkov's chances, because I wonder if he's going to allow Lima to bully him around and use that, whether it's clinching against the cage or forcing him to work off his back if it actually gets there. Koreshkov is 17-1, as we mentioned. The only loss he's got to Ben Askren. No shame in that. He fought some of the guys coming up in the European circuit that perhaps were not some of the opposition that Lima's faced. I feel Lima's faced more credible opposition more often, although that doesn't mean that Koreshkov is a pushover. He's got wins over Zaramskis, Lyman Good, Nishan Burrell, Justin Baseman, and Adam McDonough. Very precise. When he's on his game, he uses his timing very well. His movement is very good. His striking defense can become a little questionable. That's one of the things that starts to worry me about that. Lima could load up and start to create openings to start ending the fight from there. But again, his timing is just so good, and I don't know where Lima's cardio is at. I'm not sure how this is going to drag on, as this is a 5-round fight. What Lima's chances are going to be if Koreshkov continues to survive. I'm still going to pick Lima, but I think this is probably a far closer fight than it would initially seem. And I do worry, because it really does seem to me that Lima might very well finish him somewhere within the first 3 rounds. If not, it's probably just going to get uglier, but I still would see Lima winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the odds are in that favor as well. Lima is the favorite. He is anywhere from minus 175, or no, minus 172 to minus 180. Pretty narrow line there. And Koreshkov is at plus 135 to plus 155. There are very few prop bets available for this, but Lima at TKO KO is plus 110. Koreshkov by KO TKO is plus 350, and everything else is way longer than that. So
I actually really agree with those prop bets because I feel like Lima definitely. I can see Lima finishing Koreshkov inside of 3 rounds. I can't see Koreshkov finishing Lima inside of 3 rounds. However, I see Lima being finished outside of 3 rounds. So round 4 and round 5, I can see Lima maybe gassing out and getting finished. But yeah, I don't know. This one's so tough. I really think it comes down to footwork. Like who's going to be in and out, or are they both going to try to be the dominant alpha and just come straight to try to back the other up? So I'm excited. I'm super excited.
all right. It's a good fight to look forward to. I think that covers everything on this card. It's a fun card. Like, it should be all KOs and fun times, and I'm looking forward to it. On that note, I think we've wrapped everything up. You can find me on Twitter at DZaneSimon. You can find Eddie on Twitter at TheEddieMercado. You can find Vic on Twitter at VicMMartinez. One last time at Vic M. Rodriguez. And you can find all of us on Bloody Elbow.
Give us a like on YouTube. It's a thumbs up.
Yeah, give us a like on YouTube if you're watching this at home.
Subscribe to the channel. Read Bloody Elbow. Tweet us. Comment. Start the conversation.
we got the prospectus coming up tomorrow. We got the 6th round after the fights on Saturday. So lots more knuckle up next week and all the normal run of stuff. So everybody stay tuned, and thanks guys for joining me.